Our next event is taking place in Singapore between the 27th and 28th of February. Now, Founders Longevity Forum Singapore is going to be a unique event brought to you by Founders Forum, the Academy for Healthy Longevity at the National University of Singapore, and of course, Longevity.Technology. Now, the event's going to bring together global leaders in longevity, clinical, academia, and of course, investors to increase knowledge around the sector and to drive growth around Asia Pacific. Now, stem cells are a growing topic in longevity in both the biotech and the clinical spheres. And I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by Yuta Lee, who's the CEO of Accelerated Biosciences and also a key contributor to the event. So, hey, Yuta, how are you?
I'm doing great. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Singapore. And I guess that I saw you present recently at the Longevity Investors Conference in Stat, and you gave a great presentation that gave a real simple explainer about what this all means in terms of the technologies associated with, autologous and allogeneic stem cells. So could you maybe just kind of give us a simple guide as to what this is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So in most or any therapies, you have this concept of autologous or allogeneic. And autologous just means that you're taking a cell or something from your own body and either engineering it or putting it back in your own body for to repair or do have an action potential or cure something. Um, Allogeneic means you're taking either cells or material from a healthy donor and you're engineering it and putting it in your body. Okay. And so the main differences are this. When you use an autologous cell source or material, it comes from your own body, so you don't have any rejection issues. Unfortunately, these autologous cells, because they're adult cells, tend to not scale very well. So that means that the amount of treatments that you can take are very limited, right? And it's only for you. And so the only way to do it is to go into a hospital or a clinic, have these cells extracted, and you have to go through a very long process to produce it and make it into GMP and then put it back in your body. Okay. The most the most famous case of this is obviously in the 2018 17, excuse me, when CAR T therapies were approved, right? And allogeneic is when you take a healthy donor and engineering and put it in your body. And in this situation, you're able to largely scale and manufacture its use for everybody to use. But then you have to overcome the rejection issue.
So, Yuta, how does Accelerated Biosciences hTSC platform differ from other stem cell technologies, and what's it in terms of scalability and immune privilege?
Right. So human trophoblast stem cells, or these hTSCs, are the earliest cells that you can source without any ethical issues.
Right.
And they come from the embryonic stage, and we source them from an ectopic pregnancy from pre-placental tissue. And being pre-placental tissue, that means that these cells are naturally immune privileged. Right? So the embryo is a combination of the father's gene and the mother's gene. So how come it's able to attach itself to the mother without her immune system going crazy? Right?
Right.
Turns out that these cells all express a special marker called HLA-G that dampens down the mother's immune system that allows the embryo to survive.
Okay.
And therefore, we have natural immune privilege. And because they're early cells, they are biologically extremely active, and we can scale them out to a lot of cells.
Now, of course, we're going to be talking in greater depth at the conference about your work, but the stem cell industry itself is projected to grow to over 56 billion by 2032. So, what are the factors that are driving this growth, in your opinion?
I think that the main factors are historical. We've already had 200 years of chemical drugs, and these chemical drugs um, are palliative at best, right? So they block some symptoms, but they don't really solve the original problem. And I think in the last 10 to 15 years of cell and gene therapy development, people are realizing that we can now use uh, these therapies to actually cure or take care of the original issue, right? But it just takes a couple of decades usually to evolve into the FDA or EMA system. So, and I believe that people see that now as a way, a more economical way to achieve true health span and longevity.
Yeah,
So
well, yeah,
we're
that's
going to be
interesting.
shifting over.
Yeah, because that
Sorry.
was that was no, it's going to be my next question really, because it's like,
Yeah.
how do you see these therapies really contributing to the field of longevity over the coming years? Because there's a lot of confusion. People throw these terms around. There's a lot of things happening in the space now, but it strikes me
Right.
that there's, just reflecting on what you were saying, Yuta, that actually getting
Yeah.
to the root cause of these diseases is going to be fundamental to this. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I actually think that the next 5, 10 years, we're going to see a lot more of the science prove that these therapies have an effect not only for sick care, but also for prevention, and therefore really reach health span and longevity, right? And so I think it's just a matter of time before that happens.
So, Yuta, how do you envisage stem cell therapies contributing to the field of longevity and health span over the coming years?
Well, I think that a lot of the science is going to come through and really prove that these therapies will definitively cure a lot of the original source or cause of the disease.
Okay.
And we just have to get it through the FDA or the EMA system. Unfortunately, the biggest problem right now is that the that aging is not considered an indication by the FDA or the EMA. And so we still have to go through an aging related indication, such as cardiovascular disease, such as Alzheimer's,
Right.
Parkinson's, in order to get through, right? And if you look at, longevity and health span as a holistic, from a holistic point of view, you know, true longevity really resides in the prevention of issues instead of taking care of problems after they've occurred, which is what the current system is designed on. And because the current system's also, financially designed around it, meaning companies like mine will have a very difficult time trying to convince venture capitals to fund us to do something preventative. So you have to go after an indication, which we are, and I think it only takes time for us to get through the system to prove that our therapies can not only take care of these sick care issues and then start moving towards the front end, the prevention, in order to really achieve longevity and health span by applying it on people before things happen.
Yeah, and of course, there's the same in the traditional therapeutic biotech marketplace, the same challenge. But of course, stem cells are a very interesting subject across the whole space, right? Because you've got
Right.
regulated and unregulated activity going on around the world. And I guess people are still a little cautious about introducing these new therapies in some respects. But what is it you're working on, you? So, what are the sort of disease focuses that you guys have?
Right. So actually, my path in longevity, only started about 2 years ago,
Okay.
and we've been collaborating with the National Institute on Aging on using our hTSC, our human trophoblast stem cell exosomes, towards cell senescence, which is
Okay.
one of the aging hallmarks of aging. And how we're doing it is that we're taking the exosomes and we're applying it on senescent cells in vitro and in vivo, which means in the lab as well as in animals. And we're able to prove that our exosomes were able to downregulate all of the senescence associated secretory phenotypes. Basically, you know, um, all of the bad proteins that are coming out with senescent cells that are affecting your body. And these are all related to the chronic diseases that we have today, right? And so the long-term vision is that we will be able to take our exosome product and go after an indication such as resistant hypertension or psoriasis as a topical. And these are recognized indications by the FDA and the EMA. And as long as we get through the clinic with these, we believe that our exosomes should have a systemic effect on aging and as well as health span. And we really want to find out if, according to the heterochronic parabiosis studies done at Stanford 20 years ago,
Hmm.
where the two rats were, or two mice were stitched together, right?
Yep.
And the old mouse was biologically getting younger, right? That based on that theory, that we're able to systemically drive back the biological clock of all your internal organs. That's what
Wow.
we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, this concept of systemic rejuvenation is the step beyond disease specific halting or rewinding, right? So you're following a classic longevity pathway. So
That's right.
you're in the lab now, Yuta. What does the regulatory pathway look for you guys now, both in terms of next steps and timescales? Because it's fascinating.
Yeah, so we are in the middle of our preclinical study. So as long as we get our preclinical study for resistant hypertension completed, we will then go to meet with the FDA on an interact, and they will let us know exactly what else they want to see us do. And once we have that meeting, then we just have to run through the IND enabling studies, which is on animals. And then we'll get an IND and we'll go into the clinic with human
Yeah,
beings.
great. And
So
where will
this
that
is
be?
all very, very exciting.
Yeah,
Sorry?
indeed. Are you going to go USA, or where will you be running your trials, do you think?
We're going to be going through the US because the US has the largest market still.
Yep.
And we believe that once we get it through the FDA, all the other regulatory agencies should allow us to also apply our therapies around the world.
Great. Well, Yuta, really looking forward to speaking with you about this in greater depth at the conference. I mean, obviously, this is a big subject for investors, also a big subject in clinical too. So thanks for
That's
joining us
right.
today, and we'll see you in February, right?
In February.